early on the on the morning of the third day, I got just a text message with the time change. It was like 4 a.m.
Yeah.
It was like 4 a.m. Hawaii time, 8 a.m. here. I just got a little text message from my mom saying Ty, who is my sister's husband, collapsed. And he was running the Wasatch Back Ragnar race. For those that know that, it's like a relay race. And he was running one of the legs and he collapsed while he was running. And I didn't understand. I was like, collapsed like rolled his ankle or collapsed like not breathing?
Yeah.
And she just texted, not breathing.
You still are not quite sure.
I think I asked her like 4 times, are you sure? Are you sure? Like it was just like rug ripped out from underneath. Like this doesn't happen to our family.
Hello and welcome to the Jeppson podcast. I'm here with Kim Crook. Is that how you say it?
Yep.
And
that's right.
spelled just like a crook, right?
Yep.
Tell me all the things people have said to you in your life.
Oh yeah, they just think it's hilarious when there's been a crook in the store. Can I tell everyone there's been a crook in the store
like,
today? Yeah, or my grandpa. I remember when I first got married, he's like, I'm writing a check to a crook. This makes me nervous, just like
you hear everything
over and over, and everyone's afraid to say it. They always want to say cook, like is it really a crook? Like, ugh, I don't want.
Does anybody say crook?
No, I haven't even gotten that.
Some people call me July. Is there a July here? I'm like, are you serious?
So I come from a family of 5. I have 2 siblings, 1 brother and 1 sister. And when we were young, we got close really fast because we dealt even with hard things as kids. Like my parents divorced when I was 11, and we saw and heard some things that are just like kids shouldn't have to see, And so we dealt with a lot from a young age. I'm the baby.
I was going to say, what are you?
I'm the baby. Yeah, okay. I'm the baby. And I feel like those experiences really bonded us. Like we just kind of became super loyal to each other and really relied on each other and became each other's like cheerleaders and advocates and support.
Well, and that's what I always say. That's like, when I have a lot of kids, and I always say to myself, like, I had you guys so that you would have each other. Because eventually and ultimately, it's the siblings that are left on the earth together. When the parents are long gone, they are the ones that become your best friends. They are the ones that you're relying on and you're confiding in and going to lunch with. I mean, do you find that with your siblings right now?
Yeah. And even my cute mom is kind of she's aging a little bit and she's noticing it and she hates it. And it's like, my sister and I are kind of noticing, gosh, we need each other more than ever, as we go through some of these things. Well, so anyway, so if we fast forward, life seemed to be going pretty well. Like we were all doing pretty well. My brother had his own struggles, and he actually was, he had some hardship, and he turned to substances for his coping mechanisms. Yep. Yeah. So we've been dealing with him as an addict for years. Like that was something that was on the table. But 9 years ago, my husband Josh and I took our little family, just the 5 of us, for the first time to Hawaii. And we thought, oh my gosh, this is like so exciting. We've never done a trip like this with our kids before. They were still kind of little, and we were going to surprise them. Like we woke them up the morning of, and I had their suitcases packed, ready to go. And I had a little scavenger hunt in the house, took them around. It was just like so exciting, right? So off we go to Hawaii, and we spend 2 amazing days on Oahu, just enjoying the beach and each other. And early on the third morning, on the morning of the third day, I got just a text message with the time change. It was like 4 a.m. Yeah. It was like 4 a.m. Hawaii time, 8 a.m. here. I just got a little text message from my mom saying Ty, who is my sister's husband, collapsed. And he was running the Wasatch Back Ragnar race. For those that know that, it's like a relay race. And he was running one of the legs and he collapsed while he was running. And I didn't understand. I was like, collapsed like rolled his ankle or collapsed like not breathing? Yeah. And she just texted, not breathing. So I got up out of my bed. My family's all still asleep, right? And I went out into the hallway and I called her, and she didn't know a lot. She just knew my sister had reached out to her. My sister was with Ty. She had reached out to my mom and told her what was happening. My mom was en route to go get their kids and help with them, and didn't really have a lot of details. So I said, okay, well, I'm just sitting here. Like, let me know as soon as you hear anything. So I just sat out in the hall and just prayed my heart out, right?
Yeah.
Like, I just prayed my heart out. I had no idea what was really, really ahead of us. Like,
well, and did he have any like health conditions?
nothing, absolutely
So
nothing. In fact, he appeared to be in the best health of his life. Like, he had just taken up like triathlons and running, and he had like dropped some weight. And I mean, from the outside, he looked like he was the healthiest he's ever been. So anyway, so my mom calls back about 15 minutes later and says he's gone. I'm like, gone? Like,
yeah, you still not quite sure.
I think I asked her like 4 times, are you sure? Are you sure? Like, it was just like rug ripped out from underneath. Like, this doesn't happen to our family. Like, sure, it's so sad when it happens to everyone else, but this doesn't happen to us.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I just remember I ran back into our room and woke my family up, woke my husband up. I was kind of hysterical. And then I called my sister. And she was on the other end. She couldn't even talk. I mean, she could not even talk.
And how many kids do they have?
So she has 3 kids. Her oldest was serving a mission in Santa Rosa, California. He was 6 weeks shy of returning home.
Oh, no.
And then she had a 17-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old boy at the time. And so I remember I just like said to her, she picked up, but there was like nothing coming out of her. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, what do you even say?
Yeah.
And she's just like quiet. I could just hear her crying. And I just said, I'm going to get there. I'm coming. Like, I'll get there as soon as I can. And the only thing she said to me was, hurry.
Aww,
that was pretty much all she said.
She just needed you.
She just needed me. And so Josh, my husband, got me on like the first flight that he could, which was like 6:30. And I literally just threw everything in my suitcase, hopped on an airplane. I remember going through the airport and the guy telling me, your suitcase probably isn't gonna make it on your plane because you're too late. I'm like, I don't need my suitcase. It's fine, I don't need it. Yeah. But anyway, long flight home, right? I get home, just so happens that I message her as soon as I land, and she tells me to meet her at like gate D because she had gotten through security and her cute missionary son was landing a half an hour after me. He decided, gosh. So he comes home and I was able to be with her at the gate when she saw him, which was just a really tender moment. Obviously, you can imagine it was not the homecoming anybody wanted for that poor boy. But anyway, so we come, I'm home. My family's still in Hawaii because they couldn't get on flights quick enough. And I have my suitcase and I just go home with my sister. And I just remember it was a little bit of a role reversal when we were little and we were going through what we did with my family, with my parents. She was my big sister. And there were a lot of nights that I would go down and crawl in her bed with her.
What's the age difference?
6 years.
Okay.
So she was 6 years older. She was 17 when my parents divorced. I was 11. But I would go down and I would crawl in my bed with her. And that's where I felt safe. And I just remember it was like this role reversal. Like, here I was crawling back in her bed with her that night.
But comforting her this time.
But yeah, this time I was trying to figure out what to even do. Like, how do we even handle this? Like, just seemed so surreal and so unreal. Like, this couldn't possibly have happened. It was, I mean, it just, if anybody's had a sudden loss like that, it's so shocking. It is just so shocking to the core. For the first 18 months after he had passed away, we talked on the phone every single night. My cute husband gave up that like evening half an hour, and every night I was like her pillow talk. And we just like buoyed each other. And I mean, me more than her, I didn't even know how to help her. Like, it was just, I couldn't relate to that, but we did what we could. Right. And she's amazing. I mean, she's absolutely amazing, but we get through that first year and it comes time for that Wasatch Back Ragnar race again.
So I'm going to put time out. I mean, was this a heart condition?
Oh, good question. Yeah, I was going to tell you, he had an undiagnosed bicuspid aortic valve. So your heart has, the aortic valve has, sorry, I'm like.
I don't know anything about the anatomy.
Okay, you're supposed to have 3 valves. You're supposed to have 3 valves, and he only had 2 on one side of his heart.
Like his whole life?
Yes. He was diagnosed with an innocent heart murmur, but they're thinking that's what it was. And they said you would never know unless you had a picture of your heart. Like,
and why would you take a picture?
And he never had any reason to have that. He did have, like, as he was working out more and more, he noticed it was hard for him to catch his breath after a workout. And he went in to his doctor, and his doctor diagnosed him with exercise-induced asthma and gave him an inhaler. Well, like, hindsight's 20/20 now. She's like, the inhaler never helped. He was always like, this inhaler does nothing for me. Well, because he didn't have a lung issue. You know, he had a heart issue.
Oh my gosh.
So anyway, what happened, they call it the widowmaker, because what happens is when he appeared to be so in shape and doing like the best, you know, in the best health of his life, it was actually killing him.
I was gonna say,
because the more he was increasing his heart rate, the more it was causing that muscle to have to work harder and harder. And basically, one half of his heart muscle grew too large. So we always say he died of a heart too big. Can grow? Well, yeah. Like, it's just like another muscle, like, because the valve was having to work harder, and and so that like outgrew the other half.
So did it? I mean, in this race, did it just stop? The heart just stopped.
Just stopped. I mean, he just collapsed. Lisa was there. They were. There were.
I mean, was she there in the back, the car, like where they follow?
So if you've ever done that, yeah. So he had 1 mile to go, like when they last saw him. So she was like, they like saw him. Okay, we'll see you at the end, and they went up to the exchange, right? So they were waiting for him to come through, and it was taking forever. And she just thought, they're like, why is it taking so long? Why is it taking so long? Well, I guess they started hearing people come through saying someone had collapsed.
Oh my gosh.
And she thought, well, Ty would never run past someone that collapsed. I'm sure he stopped to help. That's what her thought was, right? But he didn't come. And then she started checking his location, and he wasn't moving. So she thought, oh my gosh. And then they saw the ambulance come, and it was literally like a tenth of a mile from the finish. So their team decided to just run up to where it was. Yeah. And she said she remembers just like scanning the crowd, like looking for Ty, like, because he's tall. He was 6'3". It's like, where is he? Where is he? Where is he? And she caught the shoes of the man laying down, and she knew they were his shoes.
Oh my gosh.
That's how she realized. So, and they were like working on him by that point, and she hopped in the ambulance with him. They rushed him to Logan Regional. They never got anything out of him, though.
No.
It was so sweet. The doctors there worked and worked. I mean, the chaotic room, they were just running around the table. Granted, she's with his work running this race, so she's not with people that she really knows. They're people he knows, but she doesn't really know.
Yeah.
And so she's just got a social worker sitting next to her, watching them just like try to work on her husband. And the cute doctor came over and said, Lisa, he said, we're gonna have to call it. Aww. And she said, oh, no. You can't do that. Like, it's my best friend. We've got a son on a mission. We've got 2 kids at home. Like, you can't call it. So that cute doctor, knowing like full well, was like, okay. We'll keep going.
Aww.
And they did 15 more minutes. And then he just came over, just for her. So tender. Yeah. And he came over and knelt in front of her and just said, Lisa, I am so sorry. His lungs are filling with fluid. Like, I've got to call it. And I mean, she says, I don't even remember like anything after that. She's like, the sounds that came out of me were just like things you don't usually hear from people. And, but yeah, so that is, that's what it was. So it was totally sudden.
Jeez.
Had no idea.
And they found that out through an autopsy, or did
Yep. They did an autopsy given the circumstances. I will say, to get through that year, we basically just had a couple of mottos. Like, one of them was one day at a time. Another one we came up with was, there's only one rule, and you just have to keep breathing. And rule number 2 is don't break rule number 1. Like, that's literally all there is. Just keep breathing.
All you can do is like, it's like effort to blink when you are grieving like that.
Yeah.
And she's now having to take care of her heartbroken missionary. I mean, when he had come home, and then the 2 other kids, were they girls?
A girl and a boy. So 2 boys and 1 girl. Yeah. 16 months after she loses her husband, we lost my brother. Oh. I mean, and he, you know, like I said, he was an alcoholic. He had been suffering from addiction, and we always kind of dreaded this day. In fact, even when Ty died, we kind of thought like we maybe would have expected it more to be Brian. Brian's my brother.
Was he around, I mean, your family, or did he completely, like, was he, I don't know.
No, he was definitely around.
So I mean, when Ty died, he
Yep, he was a part of all that. In fact, the next Ragnar race, we went and ran that. I had like I have a really, really tight-knit cousin group. And one of my cousins organized like all of us to go finish that race for Ty. And Lisa actually ran the leg that Ty had run. And my brother Brian ran one of the legs as well. So that was in June. And then Brian passed away in October. And he, the way it kind of worked with him was he was a binge drinker, and he would drink for like 5 days straight, and we wouldn't see him. He wouldn't show up. He had a hard time committing to things. And then he would sober up, and he would be like 100% Brian. So the beautiful part about him was that we still had like part of Brian.
Yeah.
You know, we still had glimpses of him, even though he was binging and then sobering, binging and sobering. But we've since learned that's kind of like the worst type of alcoholism, because it is so hard on the heart to just send it up, you know, into that kind of blood alcohol level, and the blood pressure would just increase so much. And anyway, he was coming down off of a binge. He had been probably like 4 days in. He didn't go to work like on a Thursday, Friday, and then it was the weekend. He returned to work Tuesday, and he went into cardiac arrest in his office. And so then I got the call that day. I still remember I was driving home from Costco with my groceries. And my dad had just called to say, you know, I just got a call that Brian's unresponsive. I'm headed to IMC hospital. And I'm like, here, what? Like, here we go. Yeah, like this here we go again. You know, like just when I felt like we were maybe like getting used to living with the grief of Ty being gone.
Well, and not to mention, I mean, it's not a long amount of time, and it's the heart again.
Right. I mean, it felt so, it just felt so similar.
I am naive. Obviously, I did not know that it was like the heart that alcohol really affects.
Yeah, it's kind of common. Like
So then what happened when?
So such a similar story. My dad sat there and watched them work on him, and just no response. By the time I got there, they were done trying. But,
oh my gosh.
But
could your sister even go?
Yeah, she did. She did. And I think she had to pull over like on her drive when I called to tell her. And because first we just heard kind of similarly, like Brian's unresponsive. So she's like heading down, I'm heading. And then I got there and he was gone, and I had to call and tell her that he's gone. And
before she showed up.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was just like, I mean, so my only sister loses her husband, and now I'm losing my only brother. And our family's dwindling, right?
Oh my gosh, seriously.
I mean, luckily we had some, like I said, amazing extended family. We have actually some cousins that we call them our double cousins. So our moms were our sisters and our dads are brothers.
No way.
So we share like the same two grandmas, and we have just they've been like siblings. Yeah. They've literally been like siblings. Like, so we go through all that with Brian, and I mean, words can't even put, like, for me, it was kind of different for my sister, but for me, the loss was deeper, right? Yeah. Like I went from losing a brother-in-law, which was really hard and so hard to watch my sister go through and her family, but now a brother,
right?
You know?
Right.
And in some senses, it was the opposite for my sister. Not that losing a brother wasn't hard, but it was a different kind of loss than losing a husband.
Yes, for sure.
And so then it kind of became tricky to grieve together a little bit. Like we were, you know, we had to work through that a little bit, because it was tricky.
Like where you'd feel like one of you had it worse than the other kind of thing?
Kind of just like, I was afraid to like, it was probably more within me. Like I was kind of afraid to like really open up with my grief or let my grief out in front of everybody, because I thought, well, how can I be this sad about my brother? Like she's lost her husband and her brother. Like, so, you know,
and it didn't like lessen your pain though. That's what's so hard. Like your pain is still just as valid and just as hard, even if it's not as hard as what we think hers is,
right?
You know, like, but it's hard to like express how hurt you feel when someone has it so much worse, and then you shut down, and then it festers inside.
Oh, I was really bad at that.
Yeah,
I was really bad at that.
I think it's human nature.
And you can imagine the anxiety, right? It's like suddenly it just like in 16 months we lose totally out of the blue. Ty was 47 and Brian was 41.
Oh, geez. Yeah, so young.
Yeah, so young, right? And so then it kind of became like, who's next?
Oh my gosh.
Like in my mind, it was just like kind of this anxiety. And I remember after Brian especially, I kind of felt like I couldn't talk to my sister for reasons that I just said. And I just felt, I've never felt that down. Like I have never felt that lonely. I can remember specifically one day I had just left the gym and I was like losing it. There was a guy at the gym that looked like my brother, and like bless his heart, he had no idea, but it was like so hard for me to see him there. And I remember like pulling away driving, and I was just like crying in the car. And I thought to myself, I thought about, and if I said their names, they'd be so mad at me today that I never did call them. But I thought about some friends that I thought, oh, I should call them. And then I thought, oh, I can't call them. Like, they're so sick of me.
Yeah.
They are so sick of my pain. I am depressing.
They're over it.
I am not happy to be around. Nobody wants to talk to me. Like, I just remember feeling that way and just so alone, even with my sweet husband, who literally like buoyed me. I just think like he literally held me up. Some days I just thought, I can't do this to him anymore.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
I want to be a happy wife for him.
Yeah.
You know, and
it's a despairing feeling, and then you can understand why people get suicidal thoughts.
But we had a lot of close family, you know, that helped, and this family of cousins that were like my double cousins that we call them. They were amazing. They stepped in.
I mean, cousins are still to this day my best friends, and that's why I had so many kids also, because I grew up with cousins. I wanted them to have that other family.
Yes. Well, I'm so glad you have so many kids, because I think all the time I didn't have enough, because my mom had 3, and now I've lost a brother, and my sister's lost her husband, and you can imagine it's Josh and me and my sister at family event. We're small. Yeah. I'm like, dang, I should have had 8 kids. You did it right. You did it right. I mean, hopefully there's always 8. I mean, they never have to experience this, but okay,
and that was in a 16-month.
So that was in a 16-month span. Okay, so then 12 months later.
Jeez, there's not a lot of time here.
No, there's not enough. It's not enough time. 12 months later, one of my double cousins.
Oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. We lost him. He was 39.
And how did he die?
He also had a substance
problem?
Abuse problem. Yeah, he had it. But
that's like losing another brother when you have cousins that close.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. So in some ways it was good that we had these double cousins, because we felt like we had more people to help each other through. But suddenly, I mean, he left behind 3 girls.
I was gonna say, yeah.
So now we've got Ty's 3 kids, my brother's 1, and then these 3, and they're calling themselves like, we're in the Dead Dad Club. Oh my gosh. I mean, they kind of make light of it even to this day, but it's like not really that funny, you know. But it's kind of how they cope, I guess. It's how they deal with it. So. But yeah, so that I just remember that one too. I mean,
But it's just insult to injury. With you couldn't prevent Ragnar because nobody knew what was happening. Nobody knew that there was a condition. The other 2 were preventable in a way, right?
Yeah.
But to lose them both the same way, it is insult to injury. It is opening the wound and pouring salt in the same place.
Right.
You know?
And we're talking about like just over a 2-year span for all 3 of them.
Yeah. It's like my grandfather committed suicide, and then my uncle, his youngest son, committed suicide, but the same way and in the same place. So it's just like the family trauma, you know, it's just like stirring things up all over again. I'm sure it just was all triggering and fresh for you guys.
Oh yeah. It's almost like the wounds never, I mean, I don't know that grief ever fully heals, but you kind of get used to living with it. But like, just when you feel like you're kind of getting a grip on things, you're right. It's like it rips open.
Yeah. And then another wave, you came up for air.
Yes. That was one of my favorite ways people described it. And that's probably, I think that's how it is, not even just with grief, but even with any sort of, but like trauma. It's just like the ocean, right? And like there's times when like everything's calm and it seems great, but even still, like 9 years later, you know, the waves come, and they're just as intense when they come. They might not last as long, or there might be more space between them, but they're just as intense when they hit.
Oh my gosh.
You know?
So we're not done with the tragedies, right?
No. So I know, unfortunately not. But I mean, I feel like then
this is like I've said this before in a previous podcast. We have the Jeppson curse. This is like the crook curse.
Yeah, it felt like it.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. So then what? So
then it was my dad. My dad has a crazy story. I mean, when he was 7 years old, he had to have one of his lungs removed because
I didn't know you could live with one lung. I knew about the kidney,
and that was in like 1953 when they had it removed. I mean, they didn't give him very long to live, so he lived to 72, and everyone thought that was fantastic. But 72 is not enough when you're the daughter, right?
Yeah.
and when you feel like you're losing everybody.
Totally.
Like I can't lose anyone else.
Oh my
you know?
gosh.
But his was a totally different kind of loss. He went into like more like heart failure, and his oxygen levels started dropping. He was on oxygen for a great like the last 6 years of his life. But he went into like oh gosh, what's that called? When AFib? Is that what it's called? When your heart, yeah.
Something like that.
And he, because of his like lung condition, everything, they didn't feel like they could re-shock him. Like the anesthesiologist wouldn't even put him out for it. So then they just tried to manage it with medication, and it just didn't hold. So he ended up going home on like 16 liters of oxygen on hospice, and it was a totally different kind of loss. Like fortunately with him, we were able to have those like really special conversations
because you knew it was coming.
Because we knew it was coming. But I guess there's nothing like this. Maybe some of you have experienced this, but like I remember the day that we left the hospital and they transported my dad in like a medical transport van, and I'm following this van and I'm thinking in my mind like, this is the last time like he's going to be out of his house.
Yeah.
This is the last time he's going to be on a drive. Like it's just like, I don't know.
It's a trippy feeling.
It is.
And you wonder what he's thinking.
Oh, yeah. He was so brave.
Oh.
He was so brave. And you know what? He was so excited to go see his boys.
Oh.
You know, that was part of what he was thinking.
Jeez, how was your mom? How has your mom been through all of this?
I know. My mom is amazing.
She's next.
She
on
is
the Jeppson podcast.
She should be. She is absolutely amazing. Yeah, talk about a gritty mom. She's been through pretty much everything you can imagine. And the amazing thing about her is I can't even tell you a time that like she doubted like her faith. She's always just had this like positive, you know, she's a mom who knows. She is a mom who knows. And I've been so grateful for that she's never wavered. It has helped me stand on my own 2 feet, you know. It's helped me not waver. And I remember like even just a couple years ago, everything's kind of seemed to be falling apart still. I mean, these things last forever, right? But like close family members around me were struggling with faith and things like that. And I just remember telling my mom, like, thank you so much. Like, because of you, I know I will never stand alone. Yeah. I will never stand alone because I have you. Right. And I'm so grateful for that. So I'm trying to be that for my kids. Like, I want them to know, like, you never have to do this alone. Like, your mom is standing in faith with you.
So 4 losses in how much time?
So it was 4 losses in 3.5 years.
Oh my gosh. That's a lot. Did you guys get therapy?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Oh
That's it was a lot of,
And how are your kids coping with the loss of uncles, grandpa?
Yeah.
Second cousins.
So 3 uncles basically, because we called Brett an uncle. It was basically like 3 uncles and a grandpa. And then also like, I feel like it's fair to bring it up, but like we also, between Josh and I, we had 3 grandmas die in that same amount of time. So my kids went to 7 funerals in 3.5 years. And they were like all funerals they should be at. Yeah, it wasn't like, oh, we just took them to every old funeral. Like
they were close family members.
And in some senses, I actually I wasn't the mom I wanted to be during those years. I wasn't the wife that I wanted to be. I wasn't the daughter or the sister. I wasn't myself.
Right.
I was not. I'm like,
how could you have been?
Yeah. And then just this fear of like, who's next? I remember like being in the shower, like making up in my head who was next and crying over it.
It's trauma. Yeah. It's preparing yourself for the next like shock.
Yeah.
You are, your brain in your body is in the defense. Fight or flight, and you're at the moment frozen. Like, I didn't want to do anything, say anything, or blink an eye in case like it jinxes this you know, this period of peace.
But one thing that we always said, and maybe you've heard this before, I don't know, we came across it. I don't think there were we didn't call them memes in those days, I don't think yet, but but one thing that got me through, honestly, and something that we would say to each other all the time was that our track record for surviving hard days so far is 100%.
I love that.
And, you know, like we've survived 100% of the days, 100% of the hard days we've been through, and we can survive this one too.
Yes.
You know? So that one was huge. One of the and this probably comes from my mom. I feel like I was taught this. This is how she is. But I jumped to work. Like I wanted to serve. Like I knew that that's where I could find joy. In fact, if I
like working as in service, not so much getting a job.
Right. No. Yeah, not a job, as in serving other people. So let me rewind just a little bit. When Ty died and Jaden came home from his mission early, Elder Zwick, who was of the 70 at the time, came and had a special visit at my sister's home 3 days after Ty passed away. And I remember distinctly to this day, one of the things he said that has just stuck in my brain. And he was telling my sister that despite these terrible, like despairing circumstances that she was in, that there was still a lot of joy for her to have in this life. And in that moment, she didn't.
I was gonna say, in that moment, you don't want to hear it.
You don't.
You don't want to hear. There's so much ahead of you. You're wanting to sit in the heart and the hurt, because it's like I mean, for me, I'm taking away from this experience, but I feel like if you are looking for the joy, you have already dismissed it all. You're like over it. For me, in my life, it's hard to push it to the side and focus on the positive. It's like I haven't respected this loss.
Yeah.
You know? So
well, but here's something that I learned is it doesn't have to be either or. It can be both. That's absolutely what I learned, because while I was grieving on one side, in fact, while I was still losing people on this hand, I was still able, I started hashtagging everything on my Instagram, Our Journey for Joy. And it would be the littlest things. I mean, luckily I had a 5-year-old at the time, so it's pretty easy to find joy in a 5-year-old, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly it would just be something he would say, that would be my joy. You know? Or the way that it was described by a therapist was actually like, it's like this grief is like a giant beach ball. And when we're trying to like push it underwater and make it go away and find the joy, like you can't, right? Because eventually it's just going to pop up in your face, like all the pressure.
Yes.
But if you just learn to let the beach ball float next to you, it's not going anywhere. It's going to stay there forever. But then suddenly when you're not working on pushing it down, you can see, you know, the palm trees. You can see the other beautiful things.
And it might just be floating behind you.
Yeah. But it's always there. See it. Yeah. And sometimes it might come right up in front of your face again, you know, because it does, like the waves, like we talked about.
Oh, I love that.
But I did find a way that, like, when I could focus on looking for joy, like that promise that Elder Zwick gave, maybe it was more for me than it was for my sister that night, because who knew what was coming in the next few years for us. But I just like counted on that. And then suddenly like my life just became a journey for joy despite what was happening. And I mean, I came across so many things like just, I can't remember who said it, but like joy has more to do with like, oh gosh.
Oh, I know the phrase, yeah.
The circumstances, what is it?
Yes.
Less to do with the circumstances of our life and more to do with it, like how we handle it.
President Nelson said it.
Yes, I think it is, yeah.
Less to do with and more to do with, yes, I'll post it. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Post it. And that, like, just those little tidbits, I literally, every time I would see the word joy or hear the word joy, I would hang on to it. Whatever quote it was, whatever, you know, I learned joy was a choice. Yes. Like, it's a brave choice that you have to make. You have to choose joy.
And sometimes you just don't want to.
Oh, no.
But it's like a survival.
It is. It became like, survival.
It's like water. Me. Yeah. Being able to. Oh
and I found joy. So my sister, I mean, we get this from my mom, but she came up with this Treasure Your Heart Day, like in honor of Ty. We did it on Ty's birthday every year. We did it on Ty's birthday. And it's basically random acts of kindness. And she made these little tags that just say like treasure your heart and have his name and his, you know, birth and death date. And we would leave them wherever we would do these little random acts of kindness. So like my kids would take like treats to school or jump ropes at recess and like leave them with a tag on them for kids to find. And our family, like I said, my cousins and everyone, they just jumped on board. They would pay for someone's gas and just leave like the Journey for Joy or the Treasure Your Heart tag. We did all kinds of things. We did big things, from like making sack lunches for the road home to just the littlest things, taking in someone's garbage can and putting a tag on it, you know, like.
So you just poured into service. You poured into focusing on somebody else, and then conscientiously, I can't say that word, looking for joy. Yeah.
And diving into the service actually gave me joy. It was the one thing that if I could do something for someone else, then suddenly I felt I could see the joy. Yeah. So one way that Christmas is always, like, I swear Christmas is the hardest. It's the hardest time of year without people. Like, I mean, I think anyone can relate to that that's lost anyone. It's the hardest time of year. So kind of in an effort to help myself and to help my sister, I decided to do a festival tree in honor of Ty and Brian and Brett. And between the three of them, there were 7 kids. And so we called our tree Seventh Heaven. And a lot of times those trees are for like primary children's kids, you know, that have suffered. And we kind of took a different take, and we did it on, instead of kids that were suffering physically, we did it for these kids that were suffering emotionally, you know, and that were trying to cope with the grief of all losing their dads. So we put everything into it. We did this for 3 years. We put everything into it. We named our tree Seventh Heaven, and it was in honor of the 7 nieces and nephews that I had, whose dads were in heaven.
Oh.
And I had them help. I would have them choose, like I did 7 stockings, and I would have them all choose the things that would go inside the stockings and try to make them a part of it. And as Auntie Kim, like it helped me so much to be able to love those nieces and nephews, like to do something for them, because really you feel so helpless. Like, what can you do? You can't fix the problem, right? Like, so that was one way that I found a lot of joy.
Yeah, because you're not only honoring him, but then donating to the Festival of Trees, which is helping primary children's kids.
Yep.
So do you have any advice for anyone who eventually will lose someone that's watching this or has lost someone? What would you say that helped you? I mean, we talked about, maybe in a nutshell, is it forgetting yourself, going to work, so to speak?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, but really, I mean, a lot of that is so much easier said than done. That's not even like possible some days. Yeah. It's not even possible.
Yeah, and maybe not when it's fresh. Yeah. But when you finally can get out of bed and put your own clothes on and feed yourself, and those waves of grief come, what would you tell your kids?
Oh gosh, yeah. I would tell my kids, like, I would tell my kids that there is still joy. That is the number one thing I've learned. There is still joy. As bad as things get, there is still joy. And I would tell my kids that the other thing that I've learned, like, I'm not afraid of death. Like, I see the big picture. And I've had experiences where I know that my brothers and my dad are not far.
Yeah, I was going to say, have you felt them?
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, even just 2 weeks ago, I had like an amazing experience where I knew they were right with me. And so I guess in a sense, I just think like the big picture, like the big picture has become so clear to me, and the perspective of like why we're really here and what we're really doing and what the purpose is, you know? And I mean, I would tell people today, before they lose somebody, I love this, President Monson, I believe, said it. He said something along the lines of, maybe you can find this one too, something along the lines of, don't save something for a special occasion. Every day is a special occasion. And that is something that I really learned. I learned that playing cards with my kids on the back porch was a special occasion. I learned that, you know, being able to sit down and eat dinner with everybody there is a special occasion. Because when someone's missing, you realize how special it is to have the ones that are there with you. And I feel like that's the beauty in this loss, is that you take so much less for granted. And that you're able to find the joy in the moment, because you know the pain of what could be.
Well, and you know it firsthand, you felt it, you witnessed it.
So that would be like a big piece. I know it's like so easy to say, you know, but like every day is a gift. Every day is a gift. Even the hard days.
And there's always joy.
And there's always joy.
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for letting me.